This video is the second half to the rear suspension rebuild, but really, it's going to be kind of a catch-all for all the other little things that I've done and just don't know where to put. We've rebuilt the suspension and now the brakes, so we'll get that done. But I also want to talk about other little things, as well as some coming up videos and projects as well. But before we get started, I'd like to tell you a little bit about pending legislation that will affect the car hobby if it's not reversed. Many of you know that I'm supporting the SEMA Action Network, known as SEMA-SAN. I'm not one to get political, and neither are they, and I certainly won't do that today. But I want to make you aware of several bills that directly affect the ability for our hobby to survive. This week, Congress overwhelmingly passed a resolution to stop California's internal combustion engine ban, which would have made it illegal to sell gas-powered vehicles in California. While it didn't just affect California, 13 other states have voted to tie California's mandates to their own. This would have been catastrophic to the car hobby, and we can thank SEMA-SAN for all the hard work they've done to ensure this outcome. There's one more bill I want everyone to support, if you can, especially if you live in California. This is known as Leno's Law, due to its overwhelming support from Jay Leno.
You don't want to make criminals out of people. You have a lot of people, they drive an older car, they've had it a long time, they maintain it. I can't get it smogged, so now they got to sneak around or get a guy to give them a phony piece of paper. And, that's what happens.
Leno's Law would allow for a 35-year-old rolling smog check exemption for classic cars. Vehicles made in 1990 or older won't need to be smogged every other year.
Our current smog rules cause many classic car owners to sell their vehicles out of state because they cannot smog them here in California.
If you care about the future of our hobby, particularly for my generation, and those of any future kids I might have, please support the SEMA Action Network. Visit the link on the screen or click the link in the video description and sign up for SEMA today. It costs nothing, and you can send emails or make phone calls to let legislators know that protecting our hobby is important. And with that, let's get to working on cars, starting with the tie rods, which I forgot to install in my last video. As mentioned before, these are heavy-duty replacements from Rodney Dickman, which come with slightly stronger hardware so they'll last longer. It even comes with a retaining ring. These install on either side of the subframe, which I've previously installed. Once the inner tie rods are installed, you'll want to add 2 nuts which are supplied in the tie rod end package. These will need to go on first because they can't be added after you've installed the tie rod end. Next, we install the tie rod ends by screwing them in. You can rough estimate this for the time being, but you may need to take them off and readjust them once the wheel is back on the car. These tie rod ends are from Mevotech, and I got them on closeout from Rock Auto. As I've said before, you can get amazing deals on higher quality parts by looking at their closeouts. Their closeouts are usually leftover well-built parts that are no longer being produced, so you can get them cheaper. These were heavy-duty replacement tie rod ends made in South Korea, which came with spring-reinforced seals, and the tie rods themselves have nearly twice the component thickness of the cheaper replacements. When I think the tie rod is correct, I use a rubber mallet to carefully install it into the steering knuckle hole, and then install the castellated nut. Normally, you'd install the cotter pin at this point, but this next step would be to install the rear wheel, and I let the car sit on all fours and measure alignment. It should be perfectly straight and at 90 degrees to the body line. In my case, it was slightly off, so I used the rubber mallet to pull the tie rod back off and adjust it again. At this point, I'm happy with the alignment, so I reinstall the castellated nut, then install the cotter pin. Don't forget to bend the cotter pin back so it won't back out. And then tighten the first nut flush to the tie rod with a crescent wrench. And finally, I tighten down the second nut. But first use some red thread locker to prevent it from backing out. You'll still need to use a grease gun on the Zerk fitting, but ideally you'll want to take your car to an alignment shop just so that you can get it really dialed in and have them double check all of the suspension bolts. With the suspension done, we focus on the brakes. Previously, I installed a set of new rotors, only so that I could reinstall the wheels, but I didn't say much about them. These are OEM-sized replacements from R1 Performance Concepts. They are both slotted and cross-drilled, which help prevent warping and brake fade. For a stock Fiero, cross-drilled and slotted are usually unnecessary for the rear, but they were only $20 more than stock, and they'll match my new front rotors when I install them. I'll be installing a set of remanufactured original Fiero rear brakes. I got these from Nugent, and they are rebuilt in the United States using all the highest quality parts. They even come with new emergency brake brackets and springs, and new fittings. Before installing these, I lay out my parts and use my brake compression tool from the Fiero store to ensure that the caliper's piston is fully compressed. Unlike the other calipers where you can merely use a C-clamp, you must use a socket wrench to turn these pistons, otherwise you could damage them. With the piston compressed, I then install the pads. I put a little bit of brake grease on the back of the pads, which helps ensure they slide on, don't stick, and also helps to prevent squeaks. With the pads installed, I then install the caliper, which slides onto the rotor forward of the rear wheel between the two brake caliper slide arms. Next, I carefully tighten down the brake caliper bolts, starting with the bottom. I put blue Loctite on these before I screw them in, and then finish up by tightening the top bolt. I still have a lot to do, but at least these parts are installed and no longer just sitting in the box. And I need the car rolling again so I can get the motor started. I installed brand new GM Acorn wheel nuts and install my newly refurbished wheels from Wheels, tires, and more, and get it back on the ground. Here's a quick preview where I install new brake hoses, the emergency brake, fender liners and flaps, and redo the entire rear bumper. But my next video will be focused on getting everything in the engine bay hooked up and the motor started. But before you go, I want to give a heads up on some of the upcoming episodes. We'll meet up with John from West Palm Beach, the owner of Fiero Stickers, who remakes literally every sticker on every Fiero. We'll also meet up with Jay Gunset, who shows us how to test and repair our gauges and even works on my gauge cluster. I'll also be taking you on a tour of Old Car City in Georgia. And then we'll go hunting for exotic cars in downtown London. And I'll even do some random urban exploration with my friends while we're looking for cool cars. But make sure you stay tuned for the next episode, where I will finally start the new engine for the very first time.
So, what do you want to do today?
Here comes excitement. Pontiac. Here come the hot cars. Built with a feel for the road. Pontiac.
So, what do you want to do tonight?
With excitement. Pontiac.